Hi, my name is Dwayne Gathers, and welcome to Civitas LA, featuring diverse and emerging leaders who make up this dynamic region and are creating community every day and building a better tomorrow. In these bi-weekly conversations, we hear from, learn from, and are inspired by a new generation of civic entrepreneurs who are forging a path forward in making our region a stronger, more resilient, and connected group of citizens. Now more than ever, we aim to elevate civic discourse, foster community connections, and promote civic knowledge and engagement across our region while elevating diverse and emerging voices in that conversation. As Civitas LA has celebrated its first year, many listeners know that we've been elevating and celebrating diverse voices by geography or economic sector. Recently, we launched our Community Spotlight series, where we explore unique communities that make up our diverse region, and we get to know more about its history, discuss the issues driving the civic conversation of the day, and over the last 2 episodes, we've discussed West Hollywood and Leimert Park. This afternoon, in studio, vaccinated, we are pleased to launch Community Spotlight Venice. Founded on the 4th of July, 1905 by industrialist Abbot Kinney, this iconic community was designed as a seaside resort to resemble Venice, Italy. Many of Abbot Kinney's first employees, those that built Venice, were African American, largely residing in the Oakwood neighborhood of Venice. Over time, in the 1950s and 60s, the Beat generation came to Venice and brought with it their art and poetry. Later, musicians such as Jim Morrison and artists such as Jean-Michel Basquiat lived and worked in the area. Fast forward, with the arrival of Whole Foods in 2008, multiple tech companies such as Snapchat and Google moving into the area subsequent to that, giving it the moniker of Silicon Beach, Abbot Kinney Boulevard itself was called the coolest block in America. So with us today in studio to talk about the past and present of this historic and iconic community are 2 of its leading stakeholders, longtime resident, artist, and business owner Robert Schwan of the Jelena Group, and Elizabeth Benson Ferrer, CEO and Executive Director of the Venice Family Clinic. Robert and Liz, welcome to Civitas LA.
Thank you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful to have you on, and wonderful to have this timely conversation about a community that's very much in the news these days. But before we get into the conversation, Liz, give us a short intro to who Liz Ferrer is.
I was born and raised in Wisconsin and went to graduate school in New York City and stayed there for about 15 years, working in East Harlem as the director of a community health center there, and was grateful because my sister-in-law sent me a fax one day saying, come out to LA, live next to grandparents, apply for this job at the Venice Family Clinic. And so in 1994, we moved west, and it has been the most wonderful adventure of my life. Each day is different, each year is different. My job changes all the time, and I work with the most amazing family of people, staff, volunteers, partners, patients every day. So it's truly been a calling, but also a blessing in the sense that the way you see the people collaborate and partner and cooperate on the work in Venice is exciting every day.
That's great. Thank you for that. Robert, welcome to Civitas LA. Tell us about Robert Schwan.
Well, I'm originally born and raised in Chicago, and I've lived in Venice and worked in Venice for 40 plus years with my wife Barbara and my son Kyle. And most recently, I'm a partner in the Jelena restaurant and tasting kitchen on Abbot Kinney. I also have a small record label, Prize Fight Records, and I produce some of the young people that work in the restaurants. I'm also a visual artist, and I've been a part of the Venice Art Walk for a number of years. And I've been a part of shows in Los Angeles, Paris, Joshua Tree, and just love Venice Beach.
Wonderful. Well, you know, Venice is truly an iconic community in our region, known for its grit, creativity, bohemian spirit, and past. So from your perspective, you know, what made Venice so unique, interesting, and special to you, Robert, when you came out here to the region?
Well, number one, as a Chicago boy, will tell you the weather. You're outside every day, and I love that. But Venice, just from day one being here, had a free spirit, and it is a place where artists have always come. You know, Ed Ruscha had his studio here. Sam Francis, you know, Eames did their work on Abbot Kinney, which used to be West Washington Boulevard. Kwaku Alston, the photographer, had his studio right on Abbot Kinney. Just so many artists. So that creative energy is just always present.
That's great. And Liz, what made Venice so interesting and unique and special to you over these years?
Well, to call Venice eclectic is an understatement, and it's an amazing place when you just pick any place in Venice and sit outside and watch who comes down the street. And it's such a mix and variety of people, all races, all incomes, but all with creative flair. So you might see someone pushing a baby stroller and their child's wearing a type of T-shirt you've never seen before on anybody because it was created at home. You'll see someone skateboarding. You'll see a man riding his bicycle with a dog wearing sunglasses and a special painted flag. And then you'll see, some of the tragedies of a few of the homeless people who have lived in Venice for many, many years. But it's all coming down the same street.
Sure.
And it's anywhere from someone who's making no income to someone who's, making millions and millions of dollars, and everyone's living there together in fairly close quarters.
Sure. Very tight community indeed. Well, Liz, first of all, I know you said you joined Venice Family Clinic in 1994, but congratulations to the Venice Family Clinic, because I understand you hit the 50-year mark last year. So, we're impressed to learn, even during a difficult year, that you all continue to expand the number of people that you serve through your 14 locations. So share with us a little bit of the history of the Venice Family Clinic and how it came into being and who it serves.
Venice Family Clinic was founded by Dr. Phil Rossman and Dr. Mayor Davidson when they were approached by a group of people from Venice saying they had no health care, and immediately said, we'll work with you. And within a year, that group that helped them and Drs. Rossman and Davidson had organized a clinic in borrowed space from the UCLA Dental Center. Okay. We were seeing folks in dental chairs at night. It was a little unorthodox. And then we grew. We got our flagship site on Rose Avenue and essentially never looked back. We started seeing folks on the beach in Venice in 1985, our first homeless outreach teams. Okay. Moved on to doing more mental health as well as our primary care work. Today, we have services that include our primary care, mental health, substance use treatment, health education, dental. And we integrate it all so that when someone comes in, if we notice, this person screened high on our depression screener, but they're seeing their doctor today, the social worker is called so they can come right out and have a chat with them right then and there and connect them into services if they so desire, because of the conversation that the doctors had and the handoff that's been done. And the result is really lots of excellent care. People who come to us say that they feel cared for in the way that we greet them, in the way that our buildings are set up so that they're really lovely places to be in during the course of your healthcare visit. And in just the fact that people listen to them. Sometimes we'll see someone who's homeless and they'll say to us, you're the first conversation I've had with anybody in the last 3 days.
Wow.
So it's rewarding work. And the clinic continues to grow. We are merging with South Bay Family Healthcare, and we'll be adding 5 new sites in the South Bay in October.
And you're up to about 14 locations now, so clearly you've grown beyond Venice. So what is the geographic scope of the services you offer?
So we span from Malibu, now it'll go all the way to the South Bay to Redondo Beach once in October, and from Mulholland Drive on down.
And how many professionals do you have throughout the system?
So we currently have 400 plus staff, 1,500 volunteers. The lifeblood of Venice Family Clinic is the volunteer clinicians and other volunteers who help us. Robert is one of them, being both an artist with Venice Art Walk, but also he puts together an incredible music program for us on stage at Google when it's live, and that we will be live coming up next May.
That's excellent. Well, certainly, Venice is long known as a bohemian artistic community, and as we mentioned with, Whole Foods and Google and others, it seems as though the economics of Venice have shifted quite dramatically in a short period of time. So I'm wondering, how have the shifting economics, how have that shifted the culture, would you say, Robert, of Venice as a community?
Over the 40 years I've been there, it changes, but it's not. You don't always notice it, how things are. It changes a little bit, you notice it a little bit. But when you bring in companies like, Google and Snapchat, and they have that type of economic power, and they bring in those kind of employees. By that I mean employees that make that kind of income.
Sure.
And then they want to live closer to work. That definitely changes the game. You notice that. You feel the change. You feel that the real estate starts heating up and things start changing and people start redoing the buildings and buildings get torn down. So that's what I really noticed. And then, you notice the Whole Foods come in because now they have customers,
Yeah.
And so you notice, you really feel the diversity change. You really feel that change.
And when did you start feeling it?
I would say about in the last decade. I would say the last decade is when, wouldn't you say, Liz, when you really start to, I really start to went, oh, wow, this is really different now.
Right.
It's just...
And different in a good way, different in a bad way, different in an indifferent way. Because I noticed certainly there was a lot of controversy, a number of years ago when there was a historically Black Baptist church in Venice that was sold to a media mogul, and that became emblematic of gentrification in Venice. And did it represent the erasure of Black culture in an area that was historically Black? And so I'm wondering, how do you view those changes, and how do you as a community preserve culture, artistic or otherwise, when the demographics and the economics are shifting so dramatically?
Well, I don't know how you stop it, but I was able to observe it firsthand because it's First Baptist Church you're talking about.
Sure,
that was sold and purchased. But before that, there was also a church, Second Community Baptist Church, right on Abbot Kinney.
Okay.
And I wandered in there one day, and I was just amazed because Abbot Kinney, as a commercial zone, had already started its big change, and here was this Black traditional church, and so I got interested, and I got to know the pastor, Norwood, and he allowed me to start documenting their services and getting to know them. And it was just an amazing experience. It was amazing that and he'd mentioned to me they had come from, the South, him and two other pastors in the 60s. And, they were still there, and that just blew my mind. So I really wanted to document it. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing even at that time to be a part of that, witnessing that amazing service and community of people, and then walk out the door onto Abbot Kinney that had now become this other type of thing.
Sure.
And so it does really change everything. When you take those kind of things out of a community and you kind of start taking away the diversity, it does change the feeling, I think.
And where's that church today?
The Second Community Baptist Church, I'm not sure where Pastor Norwood went.
But you talked about, stepping on to Abbot Kinney and this amazing block in the heart of Venice. And I think it was 2012 that GQ magazine of all magazines, labeled Abbot Kinney Boulevard the coolest block in America. And Robert, you had a business on the You have a couple of businesses on the coolest block. So tell us about your experience of having these successful restaurants on the coolest block in America.
Well, you know what they say: when they tell you you're cool, you're not cool anymore. and I think if you've lived in Los Angeles in general a long time, you know that cool moves around. Mm-hmm. I remember when it was Melrose was cool.
Yes.
And Westwood was cool.
Yes.
And so it's going to move around. I think now Highland Park is cool,
Mm-hmm.
And sorry to call those guys out, but sorry to blow their cover, but or West Adams. So I think that energy of people doing interesting things moves around, and how it felt is we were surprised, like when GQ put that out. We were just thought, oh, we are.
Okay.
That's not what we're thinking.
Okay.
I think one reason is the two of the chefs on that street really got a lot of attention. They were doing some really great stuff.
Right.
Travis Lett and Casey Lane, respectively, were doing some really interesting food that people really, really liked and were really interested in.
Sure.
So that drew that energy too.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about these enterprises that you did open and are still running in Venice.
Well, Jelena has been there now, I think it's about 12 years, and it's just a place that people pretty much from day one, food and environment, just loved, and we were very blessed.
So can we get a seat now? Because we couldn't get a seat 10 years ago. Can we get a table now?
We should probably talk about that. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's just I love the thing I love about the restaurant business is is just, it really brings you into the community.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of know everybody.
Sure.
And that's just been the blessing of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you really become a part of the community,
Yep.
you know, like with, you know,
Yeah.
the Venice Family Clinic.
Yep. Well, certainly let's go back to the Venice Family Clinic because, you know, no conversation today, at least, is happening in our region that doesn't touch on the subject of homelessness. And clearly, whether it's global or national or local news, clearly the issue specifically of homelessness and Venice specifically has been top of mind. So, you know, I know that a couple of months ago, the Luskin Center at UCLA noted that over the last 5 years, the homeless population has increased by about 50%, and other challenges have arisen as well. And of course, a spate of recent articles about homelessness have really suggested that residents and business owners are becoming just fed up with the public's response to it. So, you know, Liz, I'm going to toss this to you. So, how do you perceive the issue, having worked with homelessness populations for so many years? You know, how are you seeing the issue today and the community response to this right now?
So the issue today is a very complicated one because coming out of COVID, the encampments increased. A lot of that was because, to be truthful, we do not have a system of housing, or we have not had ever in LA for over 30 years, an adequate housing system that houses all Angelenos. We don't have that in America either. So there's a kind of an issue of federal government, state government, county and city government not really marshaling the proper resources and having any kind of long-term strategy about how do we take a growing city and make sure there's affordable housing. So that underlies everything.
Sure.
When you get to where we are today, the safest place in the pandemic for a homeless person to be was either in a project room key room in one of the hotels that had been rented by the city and state, or in a tent, because the shelters were a massive way of spreading COVID.
Okay.
Just because of the nature of you're sleeping 6 or 8 feet from someone, and I don't know if you're going to throw your mask off in the middle of the night or not, but it's very difficult. And we found that we were constantly seeing people who'd been in shelters who were getting COVID. So that was one of the reasons that some of those encampments were getting larger. And then the other is that there was a freeing up of regulations around where you could camp in the city, and it wasn't being enforced at this time. And so it allowed people to move fairly freely into different campsites and create these larger encampments. Mm-hmm. And those have been problematic in two ways. Some of the encampments, people have formed small communities. This is not a problem, and have really made an effort to clean around their areas, to keep things pretty shipshape, and to essentially get up early and go to bed early, keep a quiet profile.
Sure.
Others have turned into places where people with specific addictions, especially to methamphetamines, it's out of control. They're using heavily, they're up at all hours of the day and night, and they're really impacting the life of people who are living near them in their houses. And the question is, what do we do about it? Now, in this morning's paper, you'll see that the Venice Beach area over the last few weeks has through Councilmember Bonin's office, City, Mayor Garcetti, and St. Joseph Center, and the Los Angeles housing system have worked together to begin to house people, offer housing on the beach, and give deadlines about if you're not going to accept the offer of housing, then you need to leave this spot, and a very specific deadline. So today at 7 a.m., the north part of the Venice Beach was supposed to have been cleared, and prior to that, the southern part was cleared. And there's a small group of people who are homeless who truly believe that they can choose where they want to live wherever, and that that's their right as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of in this medium phase where I really feel that if you're being offered housing and it's something that is truly available to you, oftentimes people are offered housing and it really is a phantom, mm-hmm. then it's time to take it and move on from there and see if perhaps we can re-engage through many different care workers to address some of the issues that cause that person to be homeless.
Sure. And I did see that LA City Council member Mike Bonin, who represents the West Side, did post something that suggested about 104 previously unhoused persons have received housing. So that's a good move in the right direction. Robert, obviously as a business owner on Abbot Kinney and as a longtime resident, again, there've been a number of articles where the residents, and as we talked earlier, the economics of the place is changing. So you've got a lot of wealthy people over there saying that their space is being encroached upon. How do you perceive the issue and how the community has responded thus far?
Well, just like, homeless people are a group of individuals. There's not one homeless person, as Liz is saying. So there's all kinds of treatment and things needed to help these folks. The community is also a group of individuals. And a lot of those people are struggling, with what's happening from the situation that was obviously pushed to the limit by the pandemic,
Yeah.
And they're just working people in Venice. They're not just wealthy landowners. They're people that are working and have families and are trying to get through their lives and are being affected by the fallout of that situation.
Sure.
So, really, I think the focus for me is to people to communicate, to understand the problem, and to help. It's easy to have an opinion on either side, so you have an opinion and then, but if you get involved and you help and you understand, like Liz just talks about and her people and St. Joseph Center and the Venice Community Housing, and you understand what the people are doing that are actually trying to solve this, and you get involved.
Yep.
In that sense, I would say, familiarity does not breed contempt. Familiarity will breed compassion.
Sure.
So I just, urge people to know what's going on and to get involved. And then at least, you have some point of reference and you can try to actually move the situation because it needs everybody's help.
Sure.
That's what I believe. All hands on deck.
Absolutely. Well, certainly, Liz, with issues of the homelessness, but also just the pandemic and what that did to our community, how has the Venice Family Clinic responded, and what's been the impact on your work and your ability to serve probably more people in need?
In the beginning of the pandemic, we scrambled and were lucky that we'd been doing some telehealth before that. So we were able to extend telephone and televideo visits to our clients. And at one point, we're seeing between 70 and 80% of the folks we'd usually see during the day in the phone and via video. And it struck me because when we'd walk into one of our clinic sites, especially the one on Rose Avenue, which is just a hub of lots of people coming and going, there weren't any people. You'd walk in, there'd be the security person, and then it would be quiet. The work was still happening, but you just couldn't see it anymore. Now we're at about 60% in person, 40% back to normal in the sense of continuing telehealth because it's been very effective, especially for mental health and substance use.
Okay.
There's no no-shows in telehealth. If some reason they missed the call or the video, you just call them back later. And everyone's really happy to be engaged. We're very lucky in that we had outdoor space. So our outdoor parking areas became COVID testing and COVID vaccination areas. We've been very lucky to partner with Food Forward, Westside Food Bank, UCLA Dining, to take what was meals, a free fresh fruit and vegetable market that was every other week. It exploded into, by April, 2,000 people were getting food a week. Now we're serving those 2,000 people plus 10,000 meals through UCLA Dining each week. And it moves across all of our locations in the course of a week. And that's an extraordinary example of what Robert was talking about is we need to be together in this, whether it's homelessness or COVID. Working together in partnership is a beautiful thing, and you can go very far with it. And what I noticed during the virus and during this pandemic that has been wonderful is all the bureaucratic walls that I've hit in the past when we're working with, whether it's county, city, state, collapsed. They'd call you up and they'd say, we have this Project Room Key site. Can you get there tomorrow? And we'd say, sure, we'll get there tomorrow. How many do you need? And then they'd say, and we don't have any money for you yet, but we'll try to get you something. And we'd say, sure, fine, we'll just get there. We'll figure it out. And they'd say, we have extra people on our team. Can they partner with you? Sure, fine, let's go. So all the things in the past that people would say, well, it's a HIPAA violation, or we have this legal thing to work out. It all melted away into just helping. And I think hearing what Robert said is so true. If we can do that with this homeless piece and just work together to get people housed, to do our best to help the people who need help, and to recognize those who may be refusing it and see how creative we can get to address that. I think we can go a long way.
Well, certainly we hope that the spirit of cooperation and collaboration, will continue post-pandemic, and that all these silos will be busted. And because the challenges are certainly huge. And Robert, I know in past conversations you've talked about, at least from the residents' perspective, sometimes these issues can feel so overwhelming, and it's like, well, I want to help, but how do I start? And certainly one of our mantras of Civitas LA is to stay strong and get involved. So, share your perspective on how residents can get involved, and maybe they can get involved with Liz's organization. What's the call to action for Liz? But Robert,
happy to have them, but go ahead, Robert.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, let's start with Liz in the Venice Family Clinic. I mean, I've worked with them throughout my career. I mean, if I had people working with me that needed medical attention, I could send them to the Venice Family Clinic.
Yeah,
and that was like such an amazing thing to have. Also, there's the Venice community housing that are working on keeping low cost housing in the community. That's essential to keep our community strong and diverse, that people can afford to live there. Young people who work, in my businesses, I want them to be able to afford to live in Venice.
Sure. Where do your employees come from?
Creative.
I'm curious.
Well, originally, I remember particularly when we opened Venice years ago, they came right from the neighborhood. They really did. And I mean, they were... And it's harder and harder for them to do that over the last decade, which I think is true in a lot of neighborhoods. And, so I think that those kind of issues, the St. Joseph Center is an amazing operation. I got a tour of it. I couldn't believe the work they were doing. So, once again, just go take a look, find out. Sure. The closer you get to it, you'll be people. I think people will be relieved. You'll understand it more, and you'll see this is what is possible. There is people living in these neighborhoods. There are problems. There's problems that go on. There's crime that's a result of this that affects their lives and endangers them. But that can't stop us from helping solve the situation, because these are human beings. You know what I mean?
And Liz, what types of partnerships and collaborations are you generally looking for, and how do people get involved in the work that you're doing?
We usually start, what I find is we start with trying to have someone come by to tour, and usually in the course of a tour you'll see them latch on to something that's interesting to them, and then I'll say, would you like to volunteer in that area? And it's a whole range of things. We have everything from restaurants who help feed all of the volunteers on our Art Walk Day, in which we have an art walk that goes through artist studios and our silent auction now at the Google site. Mm-hmm. We have folks coming in each day who are putting together backpacks for our homeless clients or hygiene kits. We have, of course, always a need now for our volunteers in our food program, especially actually young volunteers for that, because we have a lot of pallets and heavy lifting.
Okay.
And we have a need for volunteer physicians, volunteer nurses,
Okay.
volunteers to do vaccination. Mm-hmm. A tremendous number of people have helped us with that. We are vaccinating every day. If people still need vaccine, we're there to help. You can just look us up on the website and call the vaccine number. We are really open to relationships in which people, what makes my job so entertaining sometimes is people walk in or call every day and just say, I have a good idea.
Interesting.
Have you thought about doing, and then they name what it is, and oftentimes it's exactly what we need. It's a very interesting phenomena.
Okay.
And I'll say, oh, we have to talk about this further, and let me hook you up with our nurse who's been thinking about trying to do that and just needs some extra help. So
Sure.
Those are the types of things that can happen each day. Robert, you've volunteered in a number of ways over the years. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you wanted to share your story of how you ended up doing that.
Yeah. Tell us, Robert.
Well, just through you, and just opportunities come up through the restaurant, and people want donations and things and gift certificates, or like you said, putting together the music, for the art walk, which was amazing to do. And there were, all groups from, Venice and right there in L.A. And
can I brag about you?
No.
When you started you were doing the music, and what started to happen is there was a whole crew that would come in around 2:30 or 2:30 in the afternoon, and they weren't there for the art walk or the art or the artist. They were there to hear the music. So I said, oh, Robert's created a little music festival here. It's fantastic.
That's great. Well, and how many years have you volunteered and been involved with the family clinic, Robert?
Probably most of the 40 years I've lived there.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, you've both have talked about and touched on the art walk, which I believe is run by Mrs. Schwann. Is that correct?
It's been run over the years by volunteers,
Okay.
and about somewhere between every 15 or 20 years, there's a kind of a turnover in volunteers because we age, and it does require
It's a lot of work.
a lot of energy.
Okay.
But Sheila Goldberg was instrumental in creating the art walk and brought her initial group of friends and folks. And Irma Colin also brought colleagues from the Democratic Party who were doing fundraising with her. And that's how that started.
Interesting, yeah.
And it continues to this day. We have an eclectic group that helps in terms of helping to kind of put out to different artists, hey, come join us for this.
Yeah.
We have many, like 600 plus volunteers who work that day.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing
And it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's an army of volunteers, and
Yes.
and I just would feel bad leaving anyone out. I mean, there's so many remarkable people it's so much work.
But the two of you as a couple have really teamed up in very unique and wonderful ways.
Well, thank you. We
And
love
that's what
we love it. It's just we just love it. Just as artists, it's just something, and to be a part of the community of artists is just a great thing. Something we look forward to every year.
We've been very lucky because the artists of Venice have, the Art Walk's been going over 40 years. Some have been with the Art Walk for more than 40 years. And all of us are recognizing, you get older every year. So at some point, somebody new has to come along. And so many of the established artists of Venice have invited and brought young artists to join. And that's worked so beautifully because a lot of those young artists are getting priced out of having a studio in Venice.
Sure.
So it's allowed the Art Walk to continue, which not only supplies us with wonderful relationships with artists and the ability to help each other, but helps raise funds for the clinic. And so all of it works really well.
No, and certainly given the dual challenges of gentrification, the changing economics of the place, and obviously you've got some amazing, tech companies and a lot of brain power over there, and obviously the challenges of homelessness, et cetera. How do you think this all moves forward, and how does Venice retain its unique character and spirit?
Wow, that's a
hard one.
That's a hard question. I think I'll just maybe refer back to Venice Beach being the people's beach in our Central Park. If we can keep access to Venice Beach and keep Venice Beach that thing that it's been, that vibrant, diverse, melting pot of people coming together, I think that'll help. Certainly, that'll help.
Sure. Liz, you want to tackle that?
I think it means that we continue to have to figure out ways to have gathering places for the community of Venice in a variety of venues. So one is Venice Beach. Others are the community that created our art walk, the community that supports the various not-for-profits of Venice that we're all so proud of, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club or Venice Community Housing or St. Joseph Center or Venice Family Clinic. Mm-hmm. The community that's Abbot Kinney, which has changed because, once again, people were aging and they closed their restaurants, but they were replaced by extraordinarily wonderful restaurants. So it's recognizing that there's an openness there, so we don't like big chains on Abbot Kinney.
Sure.
We like to have really unique, creative folks who come there to show and share what they can do, and that then invites others to come to Venice. Mm-hmm. So I think that will help keep it all going. And affordable housing.
Yes, affordable housing, critical.
So tell me, is Venice the coolest community in Los Angeles, and can it remain so, Robert?
As I said earlier, I think that the energy moves around. Like, Highland Park, recently has so much great creative energy going on. West Adams, mm-hmm. Has some great restaurants going in and great creative people doing things. So I think the energy moves around. I think the question is just Los Angeles as a whole. Can Los Angeles as a whole stay vibrant and creative now, coming out of this pandemic time? And those are tough questions, and can we keep, this diversity in our communities and keep some integrity in that diversity?
That's a great point.
That's the thing, and I've heard that highlighted in some of your other episodes.
Yeah.
And I'll be curious, after you go through these neighborhoods, if you could kind of chain some of those things together for us.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It would be interesting to have one where you had people from the different communities and could share.
Yeah. Okay.
Like your one on, Leimert Park, I was just blown away. I started looking up those companies and the things they were doing. I thought, boy, I want some of this in Venice.
It is such a wonderful joy to have all these conversations and to have episodes tie into each other. So that's definitely food for thought. So as we wind down our conversations, particularly our community spotlight conversations, we love to get an inside look from our civic leaders of your LA, or in this case, your Venice, through a series of lightning round questions. And this is great for those non-LA listeners of Civitas LA, including those from 26 countries now, from India to the Maldives, who is listening to us. So greetings from LA to our friends in the Maldives. So are you ready for our lightning round?
As ready as we're ever going to be.
Yes.
Okay.
I second that emotion.
Okay. So, Robert may cheat on some of these, but we'll see. Favorite place to take a visitor to Venice? Liz.
Oh, Venice Beach.
You have to take them to Venice Beach. They tell you where you're taking them.
Okay.
When are we going to the beach, and when are we going again?
Okay. Favorite restaurant? Robert.
Oh, that's just not fair, Dwayne. I will say, Jelena, I think, remains great, and Justa, Tasting Kitchen, I love.
Okay.
There's so many. There's new restaurants, coming into Venice. Osby is, doing a wonderful job. The Rose Cafe does a wonderful job. There's just new places cropping up all the time.
Wonderful. Liz, your favorite restaurant?
For years, I probably ate at Rose Cafe sometimes 3 to 4 times a week and sometimes 2 or 3 meals because of the nature of the meetings I was having.
Absolutely.
And wow, it did a great job because that menu always had plenty to eat on it. And Jujusta, fantastic place to go.
Lightning round, next question. Favorite retail store? Robert.
All right. I got to say it, but I do believe it's true. Justa Goods.
Justa Goods, okay.
Next to Justa Bakery.
Excellent.
Check it out.
Okay. Give us a favorite hidden gem. Give us a hidden gem in Venice. Liz.
It's the Venice Family Clinic and Venice Community Housing and St. Joseph Center and the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay. Organizations doing outstanding work. Robert, give us a favorite hidden gem in Venice.
Can I give you 2?
Absolutely.
Okay, one would be the Beyond Baroque bookstore.
Okay.
Which is amazing that it's still there.
Yeah.
And they do poetry readings and they publish and that's amazing. The other thing is the Del Monte Speakeasy Townhouse on Windward.
I didn't know that.
Which has been there since Prohibition times. And it's owned and operated by Louis and Nettie Ryan and curated musically by Carlos Niños.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, pre-pandemic, you go downstairs. And, one night, I saw Kamasi Washington down there on that little stage.
Wow.
And I could just go on and on with some of these amazing artists.
Sure. Well, certainly this is our Community Spotlight series, and community events are always important gathering opportunities for people to come together. So give us your favorite community activity or event, Liz.
My favorite community activity or event is the Venice Art Walk.
Okay. Robert?
Venice Art Walk and the Abbot Kinney Street Fair.
Excellent. We appreciate that. We will get back to both of those post-pandemic. So this has been a great conversation, and you've left us with a lot to think about and talk about, and we certainly hope people will go to VeniceFamilyClinic.org and find opportunities to serve and get involved. And we hope you can find a seat at Jelena Restaurant. If not, we know how to reach Robert Schwan and get you a table. As we say, as we say on Civitas LA, however, the guests get the last word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share? Any calls to action? Liz?
I think when you read in the paper or see on the news horrible things about people who are homeless, it's important to pause and stop, and maybe if you're passing one by, to say hello and just see what happens, because as Robert said, we're all people.
Powerful. Robert, final thought?
Well, one thought is, thank you, Liz. I mean, I just can't believe the work you do and your team. And yeah, more than ever, we just have to take care of each other.
Well, Liz and Robert, thank you both for joining us today. And to our audience, thank you for joining us as always. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we hope you'll join us in 2 weeks as we look forward to yet another great civic conversation. So as we say on Civitas LA, until we meet again, stay strong and get involved. To learn more about Civitas LA and share feedback on this program, or if you have a recommendation about future programs, please visit our website at www.civitasla.com. And we invite you to connect with us on Facebook at Civitas LA, Instagram at Civitas_LA, and Twitter at Civitas_LA.